Today I think we will talk about the spear mechanics department of my paranormal shenanigans. Whatever you want to call it. I investigate paranormal activity in the field, collect data to develop hypotheses that can be tested to develop theories which could be applied to understanding metaphysics, paranormal phenomena, why we see ghosts, why paranormal events happen, and ultimately explain everything, So, what I do is I approach it scientifically first, because I believe that physics can intersect with explaining everything. If you have that belief, and if that is true, then at some point physics will explain something, and it will no longer be an unknown, it will be known. So the endeavor that paranormal researchers have is to explain the phenomena. So once it's known, it's just going to be normal, okay? Whatever normal is, but it will no longer be unknown. With that being said, the sources of information that I draw from to develop my own ideas and hypothesis based on the data I get is from string theory, M theory, and the ether force physics. Now, without going into a huge discussion about quantum physics and string theory, go research it. If you're watching this and you have no idea what string theory is or M theory, then it's gonna be hard to understand. But if you're intelligent and have an open mind, you will understand, especially if you've been doing this for a while. What string theory says, in short, is there are multiple dimensions, and the things that make up matter is vibrating energy strings. Okay? They all vibrate in a fashion that simulates music. It all has to be in harmony, and there's octaves, there's all kinds of things that appear like everything is more of a frequency and vibration and a wave than it is physical. So when you're trying to understand specific paranormal events, you got to apply that type of physics to it, okay? Because you're understanding something that is energy and some kind of intelligence or information that's being transmitted through energy, okay? Since we have the electronic devices and the science, we can now start to understand how spirits can communicate, how they impact the environment, how they're able to manifest, how you are able to see them, how they can see you. Okay? All this is very complex things that involve very complex physics. So what we'll talk about in this episode of Spirit Mechanics is what are the building blocks to my developing hypothesis. In the field, you will get EVP and intelligent recordings that suggest that they are not dead. They're existing in another plane, right on top of ours. So, the dimensional mechanics involved in that is key to understanding how it's possible, okay? Some people can say portal. Some people can say phasing, okay? Arcing. Whatever you say. It's all pretty much the same thing to describe pretty much the same mechanic, with the exception of wormholes, because that involves pretty much a large, source of energy and crazy mathematics to pull off, and the circumstances in which you know that would make a wormhole is very doubtful in a paranormal event, especially in such a small scale. You know, it's going to be very hard to see if wormholes do have some type of role to play in the mechanic. But what I'm going to talk about today is phasing. Now, this is going to be the first thing we talk about on a very long series of things I'm going to release. Each episode is going to talk one little component of the mechanic. The full mechanic is like this working machine. So if you understand all the little components, and if I explain to you that way, hopefully you can, you know, put it all together and understand the full process and mechanic. But phasing can be explained very easily with equating it to a pendulum. Okay, if you own a pendulum, you know that they consist of like a weighted object that's hung in a series of strings, and the length of the strings are in a mathematical order or harmony, or, you know, whatever you want to say. And if you send them all in motion at once, they'll begin to sway in unison, but then after time elapses, they'll go out of phase. And then after another certain set amount of time elapses, it'll come back in phase, and it will repeat that process in a loop. Okay, and that's essentially what phasing is. Excuse me. Phasing kind of explains why paranormal phenomena happens kind of like randomly and sporadically. It's not always here, but then it is here. Okay, so why is that? Well, my idea behind that is there's some kind of phasing mechanic, either with the perception of the environment or the source of the paranormal event, or it has to do with some kind of, you know, mechanic with the dimensions. So either or, there's certain mitigating factors. Okay, and the reason why you have to look for the mitigating factors is that will lead you, it's like the breadcrumbs that'll lead you to the answer. Okay, if you have an idea, it has to be testable and replicated. So just take Einstein's theory of relativity, for example. He needed to have a solar eclipse so astronomers could point their telescopes to the sun during the eclipse and measure the exact locations of the stars around the sun during the eclipse and see if it had any type of impact on the distances between the stars, and, you know, how they changed during the eclipse. And it did prove that lensing effect bends and warps space-time. That's how he said he was able to prove it. Now, that's just based on perception. We didn't go actually make a measurement in space, but we made a observational, choice to agree with that theory. But what we need to do is eventually make the measurement somehow. And that's really impossible right now, of course, obviously. But when it comes to understanding the mechanic of phasing in the paranormal field, you have to figure out when to look, when to set up your equipment, when to, construct an experiment around certain mitigating factors that will allow you to measure energy, all the other things that apply, weather, situations. You want to record any amount of data possible every time you can replicate it. Okay, so if you can find a way to replicate the paranormal activity, then it becomes scientifically testable. Then you can figure out things. Okay, until that's done, it's not going to breach the pseudoscience level of what is going on. In my year and a half of research so far in the field, I have been trying to find out if there's any correlation with moon phase and paranormal activity, whether the moon phase has any type of mitigating factor in the phenomena. So far it seems like it does, but it's kind of counterintuitive to me so far. I think I need more data, but it seems like more activity happens on new moons than full moons. So I don't understand why. It could be because I just need to test it more if it may not be true. So it's only a year and a half, so through blood moons, I have a lot of skepticism about blood moons, but I have been able to capture good activity during blood moons, and it seems like it's always involves maybe something theological, because the blood moon comes from theological type sources. So with that being said, the phasing mechanic is something you need to address when you're trying to research and investigate the phenomena. If something is appearing or happening, it seems random, or maybe it's not random. Maybe it happens the same time every time. So if that occurs, then that's significant. If it doesn't, then that is also significant. You have to figure out what other mitigating factors. It could be weather. It could be something coming from the living person that's experiencing the phenomena. Which in most cases I do think that living people that are in a location that is haunted impact it and affect it. So that it will explain why some people don't experience paranormal phenomena when others do. Okay, as there's all kinds of different complex factors that are involved, and once you nail all those down and figure them all out until there's no more left to figure out, then you're able to construct ways to test it, to replicate it, and to figure it out scientifically. But I just want to, in this episode, pretty much tell you that's what I am attempting to do in all the videos you see me investigating. Do I got scientists helping me do this? No. Do I have the proper equipment? No. But I at least can get the idea started, so if I ever do have the opportunity to sink in ungodly amounts of money into it for equipment and help, to hire help, because I'm pretty much doing everything by myself. I have very little help in doing what I'm doing. So even though it does seem like I have a team, it's pretty much all on my shoulders. But I'm willing to go the distance on this and make it a lifetime effort to figure it out. I know that it's going to take decades to figure out, if at all. And I may not be the one that figures anything out. It may be someone else, so there you have it. Phasing is one of the first things I wanted to talk about, and it's one of the best ways I can tell you is to think about it in a pendulum. There is a predicted way how a pendulum works, where it goes back into phase and where it leaves phase. So once we're able to make predictions about when things can come back into phase in the haunted locations. Okay, there's places out there that are mind-blowing. They just don't happen all the time. Okay, you got to figure out when they happen and why. That's difficult, but it can be done with enough field research, proper field research. Okay, collect enough data, you can put all the numbers together and put all the mitigating factors together, and see which one has the highest number. Okay, you get all the highest numbers of events all correlating together and cross-referenced, and then boom, you have some way to predict it, like weather forecasting, in essence. That'll conclude today. I want to thank you for taking the time and listening to me rant and rave about crazy whack job things, but it's what I do, and until the next episode, have a good one.